checking my email.
Assuming I ever... Okay, there we go. Got it. And we're live! Hello, this is Samuel J. Morgenstern, otherwise known as Janusz, and you are listening to the Mongols podcast. This is my co-host, Robin.
Hi!
And this is our well-expected guest, Jack Meister.
Hello, I'm Jack Meister. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me this beautiful sunny day.
Your subscribers are probably most of my audience anyway, so you're always welcome.
So they know what to expect.
Yes. So,
with 200 years of background context on the topic.
Don't worry, we'll probably add on another 100 just by talking. Anyways, our current topic, as I mentioned last podcast, is some of the very early primary sources that show up in the Mongol Empire, specifically the secret history of the Mongols and the history of the world conqueror written by Giovanni. So with that out of the way, let's get into, I believe, the secret history. The secret history has a very colorful history. Lots of people debate on when it was written, when it was published, who wrote it, the usual. But as far as I know, it was likely written after Genghis kicked the bucket.
Yes.
And it was, I believe, written near the Caroline River. And if you believe the 1228 publication, it was likely finished in 1240. Coincidentally, when Ogedei finally succumbed to his alcoholism addiction.
Well, one of the final sections of the secret history is an interesting little retrospective from Ogedei on his reign. I forget exactly, but it's like, oh, here's three good things I did that I'm proud of, and then, oh, here's 3 things I'm not so happy about that I did. And it's sort of, a lot of people have argued over whether, if that's a posthumous thing, like written by his successors, or was this something Ogedei actually talked about before his untimely demise. But that just adds to the fun of the dating of the thing.
Oh, yeah, I imagine it does. So, as far as I know, the original was also apparently replaced in 1271 by a more official history?
Well, kind of, so the 1271, that's the Shenru, Qinshenlu, the veritable record, I think it translates to the conquests of Chinggis Khan. So, it's just kind of like a overlap from some of the earlier chapters. There is a partial French translation. So it's an overlap, but kind of with some different material in there. So it was sort of, the topic was revisited. And a lot of those post-1250 works with the Toluids from the house of Ogedei's brother Tolui. So the writers from the Khanates they founded, the Yuan dynasty, the Ilkhanate, which is including, Giovanni and his milieu there. Mm-hmm. If those works then are kind of written from the point of view of justifying the eventual ascension of the house of Tolui, and if you believe that the secret history was written in that period, then it's also a part of that Toluid propaganda, you might say.
It's
of course, yeah.
It's also corroborated with another source that I don't know anything about, the Altan Depter, otherwise known as the Golden Notebook.
Yes, that's unfortunately lost to us, but it appears to have also been covering a lot of the some of the same information, but with some extra stuff, because we have other sources which use the secret history and the Altan Depter. And we can see, all right, there's some variation here, but the Altan Depter, like so many other ones, there's apparently a blue book, a Koko Depter as well, which is also lost. which is sort of the great, shaking your fist like, oh, what might we have gotten if those ones had survived? But
yeah, that's a lot of historian. Anyways, a note that, at least from what I've heard and read from actually reading The Secret History and also reading through John Mann's biography of Genghis Khan, it's also short, at least in comparison to other epic poems that it's often compared to, such as the Iliad and the Odyssey. Apparently, on another note, John Mann also theorizes that one of Genghis's brothers / half-brothers, Shigi, might have been like official.
Yeah.
Might have been like the first writer, if not.
Well, part of it is because there's a couple phrases in The Secret History, like the way it's written, it suggests someone who had personally known Genghis, or it says things like, "Oh, on after this event, we went to X place," kind of thing.
Oh.
Which is, so there's a couple like small things like that, and people have just combed through the whole Secret History trying to find hints and clues, and they find little things like that where it makes people think that someone had some sort of personal relationship with Genghis. Shigi Hutahu, probably most famous to the average person for his defeat at Parvan against Jalal al-Din in 23. Is that Parvan? Yes, that's Parvan. But he was the Grand Judge, Yiki Yoraguchi, I think it is, of the empire. So he was an important figure, an educated figure as well, and one who would have been involved with a lot of the things discussed in The Secret History. So a popular candidate, but not universally accepted.
Yep. It was also, as usual with Mongol Mongol documents at the time, was written in the Uyghur script that eventually became the Mongol alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
And it also kind of had some translation problems, especially after the Yuan were forced out of China by the Ming, because Chinese interest in Mongolian culture actually went down, because they were like, let's not remember how brutal the Mongols were to us.
Kind of all they remembered, I think, was the brutality aspect.
Well, to be fair, the northern half kind of killed his dad. There is that.
Yeah, well, as you're saying there, The Secret History, so later Chinese, the Ming and the Qing, to a lesser extent, they used The Secret History as like a translation guide sort of thing, so people would help learn to speak Mongolian by reading The Secret History with like a Chinese translation side by side with it. So that's actually very lucky for us that it was used for this specific purpose, and so they didn't go in there trying to edit it and cut out bits and rearrange it and go, oh no, this isn't becoming to have written about. Cut that out. So, and one of the long-reigning Qing emperors, I can't remember which one right now, Qianlong, I think he actually did try to do that, like, oh no, this Mongolian isn't very good, I'm going to fix this, and he ended up putting worse Mongolian into it.
Okay, I do have to appreciate that.
I don't know the specific details around that, but I've heard variations of that.
That doesn't surprise me, knowing what I know about Qianlong. I used to study a bit of Chinese history, kind of working a bit with my ancestry. I'm half Chinese. And so, as many of us probably know, it's basically Genghis's life in brief, but before that, it kind of... or at least as far as I know, according to John Mann, because I don't remember where I found this in The Secret History, but it kind of claimed, it made a couple loose claims on how the Mongols supposedly originated.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
famously, it's they derive from the blue-gray wolf, Bork-pig chino, and the fallow deer. Uh, Guamural, I think it is. And they gave birth to the first of the Mongol ancestors. You know, the famous coupling of the wolf and the deer.
Sorry, the doe can't be at the office today. Why? Because she's banging out a 14 million square mile empire.
And then there's another line so it goes from that, and then it goes through like every generation until you get to Genghis Khan.
Right.
And one of the generations, sort of the most famous one, it was his great grandmother kind of thing. And her first husband died, and she had two or three children with him. After his death, and it varies on translation, but it has either a ray of light or a yellow man comes into her tent and rubs his hand on her belly, sort of an immaculate conception sort of thing, and then she gets pregnant, and that's where her next three children come from. And that's also where, you know, the famous story of the you give them the one arrow and they break it easily, but you give them 5 arrows together and you can't break the 5 arrows together.
Right.
So, because she's doing that to explain, okay, all my children, you all have different fathers, but you're still brothers, and you have to be united. That important theme of unity and division, which comes up every succession crisis, it seems, with the Mongols.
It also seems to show up a little bit in steppe folklore, from what I loosely know, which isn't surprising because, you know, bows and arrows, just part of standard steppe folklore as usual.
Yeah. It's a pretty basic idea, but the Mongols, of course, it has to be with arrows.
Yep.
And it can't be with horses, it's going to be with arrows.
Kind of hard to break a horse.
Yeah. Not a great example for... put 5 horses together, they're invincible.
So after the whole wolf and the doe coming together, they begin with Genghis's ancestry, which starts with apparently 2 brothers, the One-Eyed and his brother Doban the Clever, who apparently set out to climb the sacred mountains, Burkhan Khaldun. That's just pretty universal Mongolian culture. And they meet a hot girl.
Yeah, not quite the wording in the secret history, but I suppose an appropriate translation.
And she is with her family, so that's an easy way to start a relationship. And the whole family is apparently led by this guy by the name of Koral Tartai the Clever. And they've been wandering nearby because the people of this region, the Koritun, refused to let him hunt squirrels and birds. So naturally, he's just like, screw the hunting regulations. Apparently, I'm feeling strangely American. So, Doban the Elder and Doban the Clever and the girl Alan, they marry after meeting up with the family and arranging the marriage, and they have they have 2 sons, Belgunute and Bugunte, and Dua the One-Eyed also apparently has 4 sons with another woman. I don't know who exactly. And they basically, they don't get along with Doban because apparently generational gap. I don't know exactly.
Okay, boomer.
Essentially. Oh, the topics that we're going to cover today. And they go off and make a plan, and apparently generational divide is not so bad because they named their clan after Doban. And sometime after the birth of the 2 kids, as they're growing, he goes hunting. And he meets a guy cooking some deer. And he gets some deer meat, they share together, and he keeps some of it along the way home, and he apparently trades some of it for a kid, and then, because does slavery exist everywhere in human history? Just about. Close enough.
Yeah.
And then they basically kill him, and Dobin dies, not explained, because it's probably just that far back in history, and that's where, of course, Alan has the 3 more sons, and nobody agrees on the parentage. And then, of course, Alan does the famous arrow story.
Mm-hmm.
And she's basically, you guys all stick together. They did not listen to her advice, if you're wondering. Because they're like, okay, we're going to give everybody a piece of land after Mom dies, except for Bodochar. Because apparently he weak sauce and we can't trust him with anything.
Bodochar Mokog. So the epithet means Bodochar the fool.
That's...
Or it says in the translation here, Bodochar the fool or simpleton.
So he's dopey of the Mongol sons. And he leaves because, well, he clearly feels unwelcome, and he lives off of birds. And apparently his brothers don't like him alive because his brother Bukchu Katagi goes after him with no success. And then apparently some time fast forwarding later, not sure how much, they go all the way to Kabul Khan, who appears as the first leader of the Kalmyk Mongol Confederacy.
So Kabul Khan, so he's roughly dated to the final years of the Lao dynasty, so sort of like end of the 900s, and he's kind of the first one of these figures in Chinggis's ancestry that would go, all right, he's probably a real person. So, yeah, and sort of so you mentioned the Kalmyk Mongol, that brief, sort of vague military alliance. So that's sort of emerging as the Lao dynasty is collapsing in North China under the Jurchen invasion and the founding of the Jin dynasty.
Right.
So it's kind of leaving a power vacuum in Mongolia, which we have these relatively minor chiefs, Mongol chiefs, taking advantage of to sort of get some tribes together and start pooling their resources or exercising sort of a loose sovereignty, which they couldn't have done before due to the Khitan garrisons in Mongolia.
Right. And the Jin, of course, kept an alliance with the Mongols because at the time the Mongols were still the number 2 power at the time, but then, of course, they got to number 1 eventually. That's a little later. But Kabul first chooses Ambakai as his successor, and Ambakai makes a relatively advantageous marriage choice for one of his daughters, namely marrying her off to the chieftain of the Tatars. And although apparently that's going to bite him in the back, because the Tatars decided, yes, you're a good father-in-law, but apparently the Jin have now put a price on your head, so we're turning you in.
There's marriage alliance, and then there's all the treasure of North China being offered by the Jurchen.
Which, of course, the Tatars never get.
There's a famous anecdote on Kabul. I don't think it's in the secret history. I think it's actually in Rashid al-Din. But so Kabul, because he's sort of rising in influence, goes into or gets invited to the Jin court. Basically, so they wanted him to enter into a tribute relationship and sort of be their vassal. So he goes to the court. There's this big feast, and in good 12th, 13th century Mongol tradition, he gets absolutely hammered, walks over to the Jin Emperor and starts pulling on his beard.
Oh no!
And so the guards pull him off, and the Jin Emperor initially decides to let him go. Habu leaves the capital, and then he changes his mind and goes, "No, we should probably kill that guy." So he sends some men after Habu, who ambushes and kills them. Then he escapes back to Mongolia, and this is sort of, at least in the Mongolian tradition, a big part of the origins of the conflict between the Jin and the Mongols, because from here, the Jin are sort of gunning for the Mongols, or at least hoping to break up their alliance, which brings us to poor old Uncle Ambakai.
Yep, who gets killed?
Crucified, basically, tied to a wooden donkey, or nailed to a wooden donkey sort of thing.
Oh, that's brutal. Oh,
yeah.
I don't need to picture that.
At least he didn't get nailed to a real donkey. That would have sucked. And all parties involved.
Agreed. So, after that, Yasugai is one of the warlords that sort of happens because the Khamag-Mongol Confederacy is in a decline/breakup. And Yasugai makes a choice that is totally not going to bite him in the backside later. He makes a raid on a tribe that has recently married a hot girl named Hulun. That's not going to be important for later. And Hulun is, of course, Genghis's future mother, and so she was originally married. So she was originally being married into the Americans from her old tribe. I think I'm blanking on its name right now at the moment.
Yeah, she was from the Ol Kunud, which I don't know how to pronounce properly, because it's one of those ones which is spelled like totally differently in every transliteration.
Oh right, yeah, and apparently as Americans are being pursued, she tells her husband go, and she gives him a piece of her clothing so that he remembers her, and they run, and she gets captured, and Yasuge takes her as his bride. And Kutula tries to keep the Khamag-Mongol Confederacy together after Ambakai got royally killed by the Jin. It does not work out too well, but Yasuge is willing to work with him for now. And he actually fights the Tatars quite a bit. And he captures some of the Tatars, most notably Temujin Uge and Koribuka. And specifically Temujin Uge is going to be quite important because Yasuge decides to name Genghis after Temujin.
And that's the last mention of Temujin Uge as well, so probably he was sacrificed essentially for the young Temujin, born about this time clutching a blood clot the size of a knucklebone.
Ah, just like a future daughter of his, if I recall right. Yep. Yeah. And so, of course, then a little bit of his, then there's a little bit of his early life, right up until about the age of 9, when he is married to, and he's about to be married to Borte the Onguts, who is, of course, somewhat related to his mother, Holun. And
yeah, the Ongut were, it was sort of, the Old Kunud was, no, I think the Ongut was like the wider tribe, and Ulun's tribe was like a sub-tribe of the Ongut.
I see.
That's kind of the relation there. So it's like a larger tribal grouping, but it's not like, oh, Ulun was Borte's aunt, kind of thing.
She wasn't that old. Maybe like second or third cousin.
Yeah.
And that's probably being generous. And Anyways, on the back road, Yasuge spots a group of Tatars who apparently invite him for dinner, even though he probably should not trust them at this point, judging from his family pattern and from his pattern of fighting the Tatars on several occasions. But either way,
Many occasions, yeah.
after a good night's supper, he probably feels something up his stomach, and he's like, I've been poisoned. And he manages to make it back to Hulun before he kicks the bucket, and a message is sent out to Temujin, who is actually rooming with Borte at the time. And they're like, hey, Temujin, could you get back here for a hot second? Your dad just died.
When you think it's your lactose intolerance acting up, but nah, someone poisoned you.
Indeed. And then Temujin tries to assume leadership of Yasuge's clan. And that does not go well because everybody in the clan is in agreement. You're 9. You are not qualified for this job. In fact, you're so unqualified, we're sending you and your entire family into exile.
Well, there's also... so Ambakai, his side of the Mongols, they were from the Taechuyut clan Mongols, and then the Esigai and Hotala were the Kiat Borjurgen. So it's kind of these two clans. So when Esigai died, the Taechuyut wives within his camp kicked out Esigai's remaining family, the sort of the heirs to some of the leadership of the Kiat Borjurgen, and it's sort of easy. Oh, they're just 9-year-olds. Get rid of them. Bunch of extra mouths to feed. So
yeah, and they live out in the woods, and the family makes a living off of mainly foraging, and Bector, I think, specifically becomes a bit of a problem. He is the oldest brother, and he's thinking, well, I have the right to everything because I'm the oldest brother, you know me. And he was like, Temujin, that's a very nice hawk you have there. Yes, I just killed it. It's mine now. Okay, that's kind of sad. Okay, that's a very nice wife your dad arranged a marriage for. Okay, I'm taking her too. You did not just do that to me. So Temujin gets together with another of his brothers, I believe.
Hazar.
Hazar, and
Because he's famous for being the best archer among the lot of them.
that makes sense because they shoot Bector about a few minutes later, and they shoot him very dead. And his mother's a little pissed. So sometime after that, maybe to get himself some space, Chinggis ventures out for some more foraging. And he gets a little bit too close to the Tayuchit camp, I believe. And he gets captured. And this is where I believe they put him in the Kang.
Yep.
The King, as far as I know, is this very interesting version of cuffing your prisoner. Basically, the Y-shaped stick, and the hands are often attached to it by some cuffs, and then the Y-shaped branch is specifically there so that they can slide another branch over your neck and keep you in there. So
there's a Qing Dynasty variation, and it's basically just a board. Your hands go through the board, and then there's another hole through your neck, and it's sort of clasped on either side. So you're basically stuck with your arms up, kind of like a fork, sort of held up in that position there. And it's basically impossible to get comfortable in it, and it's an awful
I can imagine.
thing.
I can imagine. It's kind of a version of the medieval padlocks, except you can walk with it.
Yeah.
And that's about all you can do. And obviously, Chinggis is not thrilled. Or Temujin at this point currently. So he's sitting in the cart with his arms and the neck in the king. He's not thrilled. He's very uncomfortable, and he starts talking to his prison guard named Sorkanshira. And Sorkanshira is one of the lower class Tayuchids. and this is going to be a little bit of a theme later. And he's like, "Hey, I know you don't like your position, Sorkan Shira. Yeah, I know. I don't exactly get good pay. I keep on getting snubbed because I'm of lower class. What if I could change that for you in a couple years? How so? What if I give you a higher class job for you and your kids? Because I think you're such a good prison guard. You haven't let me escape yet. Okay, what is the price for this? You bail me out. That's the key word." And Sorkan Shira is basically, shit, I'm sold! And he bails out Temujin in the dead of night, helps him escape, and that's basically, and of course Genghis jots down Sorkan Shira, and he's like, "I'm gonna remember this because you won't regret this, dude. I'm totally gonna come back. Just wait a couple years, because I got things to do." So he gets he first gets a couple of friends, specifically I believe Borchu, because in the time that he was being kidnapped by the Tayuchids, his family's horses got stolen. So Borchu helps him get them back, and this is another friend that he's going to keep around. And then he, of course, goes over to the Merkids because he is reaching his, I believe, adulthood or teenage years, and he goes to Yonguts, and he's like, "Hey, I know as promised to Borte years ago, can I have her again?" And they're like, "Sure, it's been a while." So, and...
Well, that's one of those episodes where there's some debate over how accurate the secret history is with the chronology here. Is some people have suggested that when Esugai came and brought Temujin to Borte's family, that they sort of mush it together that Esugai is killed on the way back, and have suggested instead that Temujin spent several years with Borte's family, and Esugai was killed later, and then Temujin rides back. And if there was that longer period of time with them, it would make a bit more sense why Borte's family would have left Borte unmarried for a kid she was proposed to for 3 days before he went missing.
Makes sense.
So,
and
there'll be a lot of that in the sequel. It gets kind of flexible with chronology at times.
It happens. I mean, this was only written after his death, so they couldn't have exactly confirmed it with Genghis himself. And he also makes another big friend, Onkan, otherwise known as Togrul, who is the leader of the Karyots, who is actually currently the leader of the most powerful tribe in Mongolia. Because the Tatars kind of got on the bad side of the Jin. And they started...
In a couple decades after this, they do. Not
not yet? Oh, my bad. So
1190s they do, and that's... Then Togrul and Temujin. That's actually when Togrul gets the title Onghan.
Oh, he's right. He's not right now. More known as Winonghan, and he gets another friend in Jarchiudai, and he gets to sort of honorarily adopt Jarchiudai's kid Jelma, and this is all while he's getting his morning nuptial, his wedding nuptials going. And he specifically befriends Winong Khan because Winong Khan was a friend of Yasugai, and they were apparently blood brothers at some point. And Temujin is like, "I'm going to write a letter to you and give you get a letter written to you and this fur coat from apparently my dad, and we can be friends." And Winong Khan / Togrul accepts, obviously. And shortly after that, Genghis gets a little bit of bad news. The Merkids have shown up on his camp, and they'd like to and they'd like to send them all running, and everybody runs except for Borte. She was apparently either lost in the escape, or she deliberately left herself behind.
Or there wasn't enough. I think what it says there wasn't enough horses for Borte. Or no, there was a horse, but Temujin took it with him. And it said, I got the translation right here. It says, so let's go through. Everyone gets on a horse. Temujin rode one horse. Olun rode one horse, Hazar rode one horse, Hashiun rode one horse, Temuga rode one horse, Belgatai rode one horse, Borchu rode one horse, Jerma rode one horse. Olun had her youngest daughter in front of her. One horse was harnessed as a spare horse. There was no horse left for Lady Borte.
Oh, ouch.
So some people have suggested like this is actually a good indicator for the reliability of the secret history, because it looks kind of like what they're trying to say here is Temujin ran away and abandoned his wife, which if this was like pure hagiography, you wouldn't have written in the 1270s when Chinggis was basically God.
Right.
You wouldn't be including these sorts of details, which don't actually make them look all that good.
Yeah.
We're 30 pages into the translation here, and he's kind of gone from defeat to defeat to defeat, and we got like another 40 pages of him going from defeat to defeat to defeat before, minor victory.
Yeah, and Borte is, well, stolen by the Americans, and Genghis is kind of pissed, and he sends out messages to his two best friends in the world, Jamukha and Togrul. And he's like, hey, my wife got kidnapped, and the Americans did it, and I could use some help getting her back, or at least killing her before anybody does the thing. And Jamukha is like, sure, because we're besties and blood brothers and such, and we've always been that way. And Togrul's like, I always honor the requests of my, essentially my blood nephew. So they show up, and Togrul and Chinggis are specifically a little late, which kind of pisses off Jamukha. Not enough for them to ruin the raid with against the Americans. And they run over to the Americans, and they're wrecking everything. And that's where, of course, they find Borte, who is kind of running out just to see what's going on. And the reunion's happy, but there is a little bit of a problem. She's pregnant. With, of course, Jochi. And Jinx is like, I don't know the father. I probably killed him. Either that or I'm the father.
Well, actually, they do know. So the husband they married Borte to was, I think, the brother of Olun's original husband.
Oh, that is spiteful.
Yeah, it's like the younger brother. I think they do say his name, and they give all the genealogy at some point, but I don't remember Borte's brief American husband's name.
Yes. So they naturally the Americans are all running off, and Jochi is basically adopted into the family, and shortly after this, I think, Chinggis is made Han of whatever's left of the Kama Confederacy, and this is while he is also rooming with Jamukha in celebration of the return of Borte, and they room together for multiple years before they eventually piss each other off.
Well, it's very vague what happens. Jamukha gives Temujin a riddle that he doesn't understand. We don't understand it. and he asks Borte and Olun what he should do, and Borte reminds him, Jean-Lucas very fickle with his friends. You know, you're sort of better off getting out of here while you still can. And as we see that over the course of the secret history, there's not a lot of people who Jean-Lucas doesn't betray at some point.
Yeah. I think he even betrays Toguro, if I remember correctly, right?
He's betrayed everyone. He's been described, one author described him as a bit of a diva.
Oh my. And another tribe, apparently was trying to run around the Chinggis briefly and trying to get allied with him. These are the Jurkins.
Yeah.
And they are, but apparently they run off.
They raid his camp while he is, or hang on, am I confusing that with a later? I think you're skipping ahead a little.
Oh.
In the secret history. We gotta talk about Dalan Daljut first.
Oh yeah, that's when the friendship officially goes sour.
Yes.
Well, it's been going sour for a while, but yeah. So basically, the thing is, Jamukai has been getting the news from whoever he trusts, besides Chinggis, that Chinggis is getting a lot of power. Not just that he's being made Han of whatever's left of the Kamags, but also that he's promoting people based on merit, like the guy who broke out of jail, who kind of Sorgan Shira and I believe his kid eventually become one or two of Chinggis's generals.
Yes, but he does kill some of Sorkin Shira's sons or grandsons in battle first, I think. They end up submitting to Chinggis after the defeat of the Merkit in 1201, I think it is.
Oh wow, that's
at Battle of Hoyatin, and so he finds Sorkin Shira's family afterwards. Like, I'll give you guys what you want. And he goes, oh, you know, we surrendered too late. You already killed my grandsons. So
yeah,
whoopsie.
Yep. And of course, Jamuka officially says, "Chinggis, you're off my friends list, and I'm also going to try to kill you."
They try Jamuka's cousin or younger brother. I don't remember. The secret history kind of uses cousin and younger brother kind of interchangeably. But Jamuka's younger brother / cousin, Taichar, tries to steal horses from one of Temujin's herders, and one of Temujin's herders shoots him with his bow, kills him, but doesn't know who it is at first, and then finds out, oh, I just killed Jamuka's brother. And then Jamuka, I guess, took this as kind of like a act of war, like, alright, you can be Han, you can put herders in control of armies, but you kill my brother, you just crossed the line here, champ.
And they fight the Battle of Dalan Balashut, and
70 marshes, that's what it means.
Yep. Oh, that's interesting. And Jamuka's Jamuka's forces vastly outnumber Chinggis's forces, or at least to some extent. And Temujin is absolutely routed by the sheer weight of numbers, and he, as far as I know, disappears a little bit from the historical record for a little bit.
It's kind of, if you're taking the secret histories sort of events, like, all right, these events are happening when they happened. Dalan Baljut is occurring about 1186, 1187. Temujin's next definite appearance isn't until about 1196, when he attacks the Tartars with Togrul and the Jurchen.
Right.
So that's about a 10-year period.
So
where there's a couple possibilities. The one is that he just spent 10 years slowly building up his power again, and the secret history doesn't say anything because it's kind of repetitive. Nothing interesting happened. The other alternative, I don't know who first proposed it, but the idea was popularized in Paul Rachnevsky's famous biography of Chinggis. And he suggests that Chinggis spent all or part of his time in the Jin dynasty, or sort of on the Jin dynasty's border, trying to get support. Now, that's not a unique thing. Togro, every other month, was basically fleeing to someone else to try and get support to get power. So the theory goes that Temujin went to the Jin dynasty and spent those years there trying to get support, like material assistance or even an army to help get him back in power on the steppe. And when he shows up again in 1196, it's him, Togrul, and a Jurchen army attacking the rebellious Tatars, the former vassals
I see. That makes sense, because they do give him a call to actually destroy the Tatars.
So that's kind of if Temujin was actually in the Jin dynasty or in their territory, that would have facilitated that connection, and would explain also why they're getting Chinese military titles. Togro gets Onghan. I don't remember what Temujin gets. Interestingly enough, it's this actual event is recorded on a Jurchen stone inscription in Inner Mongolia, I think. So it celebrates Jurchen defeat of the Tsubu, they call it. It was a Khitan term for all the Mongolian peoples was Tsubu. But it's kind of interesting that here we have, that's, I think, the earliest source outside of the secret history. That's the only 12th century source confirming a movement of Chinggis Khan, essentially. Everything else comes from the 13th century.
Right.
Just one last point on that general thing there is one southern Chinese source, so from the Song dynasty.
Ooh.
And it says something along the lines of that Chinggis Khan spent 10 years in Jurchen prison. Some variation of that, which could be seen as them misinterpreting his time in the Jin dynasty as, he was there because he was imprisoned, sort of thing. I don't remember the exact source, though, who states that, so...
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The Song weren't exactly friendly with the Jin either.
Oh, good heavens.
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of feuding, which we're not going to get into.
Yeah, that's another hour talking about all of that there, so...
Easily. And then, of course, Chinggis and Togrul go after the Tatars, and they absolutely wreck them, everything. And they basically kill everyone that is male and of fighting age.
Or that's in 1202 that they do that. 1196 is just a regular defeat of the Tatars.
Oh.
Because he left it because he comes back in 1202, and then you kill everyone above the linchpin of the.
Yes.
Part.
Yes, and of course the males of fighting age is specifically so that you can marry all the girls.
You take the women, you take the children as slaves, you take all their loot. Now, and we mentioned Shigi Hutuhu earlier.
Yes.
I think it's going to be this one or 1202. That's when he comes into Chinggis Khan's entourage as either adopted by Olun or adopted by Borte, depending on the source.
Makes sense. And I believe Jamka comes back in because, as always, when you betray a friend, you gotta go full into it and actually kill the dude. Because apparently Jamuka failed on that last time. By a long shot. And he's like, I'm not making that mistake again. But apparently by this point...
he will.
But apparently by this point, Chinggis has figured out his battle organization. He has put the Mongols and his various allies into units of 10. And and Jamuka again tries to use his superior numbers currently, but he also has a very unhelpful Stormcaller.
Yes.
The Stormcaller tries his best, but the weather apparently works like fate and decides to destroy Jamuka's army. So Jinx is like, easy victory, Blue Heaven wills it, and Jamuka's like, I'm gonna have to run again, right? Or run for the first time.
That, he attacks his one of the camps of one of his followers and loots them. He's like, well, I didn't get anything from this battle, so I might as well go home with something.
Makes sense.
So.
And of course, and after this, I believe Togrul is Togrul's life story is briefly put in there, at least in brief. Like the Cariids were not much like the Mongols before them, and of course they record like he got to be blood brothers with Yasugai, and they had their good friendship until Yasugai died. Right, and of course Togrul gets to be Onghan because now the Tatars don't exist anymore. And Chinggis offers his son Jochi in marriage to Togrul's daughter. And this apparently does not go over very well. because apparently Togrul got a letter from Jamuka. And Jamuka is like, Togrul, Chinggis is getting some power. He's not going to leave you running around anywhere. Trust me on this. Look at me. Well, look what happened to me. And
Togrul's son, the second Ilka, he's sort of like loses his mind at this because he really wants his father's throne.
Oh,
and he thinks
too.
if this marriage happens with Temujin and his sister, with Juchi and Onghan's daughter there,
yeah,
then Temujin will be Togrul's heir.
right. That's another
Can't
thing.
have that. And so the one way to get Togrul to do whatever you want was like threaten him with losing his throne. He seems, because at this point here, Togrul's probably about 60, 70 years of age.
Right.
He's old, he's feeble, he's lost his decisive ability to act anymore.
Right.
He's just afraid of losing his throne again, because it's 3 or 4 times he gets chased off of his throne. In the first place, he had to kill his brothers and fight his uncle to get the throne. Like he did not have an easy time of it, so he's terrified of losing it again. So that leads us to
checking Temujin off the friends list and going with Jamuka to try to go after him. And the next battle does not go well for Togrul, and Togrul is defeated, and somewhere in the pursuit, I believe he is killed. But this battle,
to the Naiman territory in the west, and the border guard doesn't recognize him as he goes, no, this little old man by himself, that can't be the powerful Khan of the Cariids, and decapitates him. But it was the Onghan.
mistaken identity indeed. But this battle is also a little bit closer than expected because somebody shot Chinggis off his horse. And this is specifically a guy by the name of Jeeb, who is one of the lower class archers of Togrul's army. And shortly after the battle, Jeeb is captured. And Jeeb, in surprising honesty, basically tells Chinggis, yeah, I kind of shot you off your horse, nearly killed you. And Chinggis is like, that's great, you're good at that. Thanks. You're going to be my general now. Wait, what? Why was I soldiering for Togrul again? I could got in a good paying job with Chinggis, and I was working with the 6-year-old Onghan who's worried about everything.
I think he says something like, if you let me live, or if you kill me for this, I'll be useless, just dead in the ground. But if you let me live, then I can be your arrow.
Well, yeah, and Chinggis accepts that offer, and he continues pursuing after Togrul obviously finds his body. And Jamukha has officially fled to the Naimans and did not get killed, apparently, by the border guards. And the Naimans are like thinking, well, we're the next power on the steppes, but the Mongols are coming for us, and we just took in Jamukha, so we know we've got a lot of problems. So they actually call up whatever allies they might have left, including Alakush and the Unguds, who happen to be Chinggis' mother's family. And they're like, nah, we're not into this.
Oh, sorry, you've been... Yes, earlier when I kept saying Ongud, I should have been saying Ongurat.
Oh, Ongirats, right.
They were the... Yes, so on Chinggis' southern border, they were actually the Jurchen called them Juyin. So they were kind of border guards for the Jurchen.
Ah, yes.
And so the Naiman clan, or one of the Naiman clans, because there's two Naiman clans at this point, he goes, I'll get the Ongud to attack Temujin from his southern flank, and then we'll kind of like a two-pronged pincer assault on Temujin's territory. But the Ongud, to hear that, think, hey, probably not great for us, because that's probably just going to be Temujin directly attacking us. So they, in fact, inform Temujin about this. He's pretty appreciative, and he marries one of his daughters, Alaka Becky, I think.
Oh!
To the Onguds.
Yes.
So they actually end up in a pretty good position
Yeah.
out of all that. And it comes in a bit later. The Onguds are the ones manning the Jurchen, or the Jin Dynasty's border walls, the Great Wall. It was kind of like a ditch and earthen ramps. So what happens, when everyone likes to go and Genghis Khan went around the Great Wall of China. Well, actually, no, he married into the family of the people actually manning it, and they let him through.
So he didn't go around it, he went through it.
Yeah.
Not that there was much Great Wall left, but there you go.
There's actually, on that Jin Dynasty wall, there is kind of like the remnants of it left in Inner Mongolia, and it looks like it's like a ditch.
Oh, wow.
That's all that's left. Because it was just the early walls before the Ming Wall were just stamped. So if they're not maintained, wind and rain, it just wears it right down.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Mr. Jackmeister, sir.
Yeah.
We have to...
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll just push the recording.
Okay, yeah. We're about to do the end of the thing, so I wanted to let you know before the end of the hour that we have to record before we start a new hour over to finish the rest of the thing. Just wanted to make sure they didn't go into a rant and we had to interrupt you.
That doesn't sound like something I do.
Well, because I don't want to interrupt you because what you're saying is really interesting.
So,
yeah, I'll let you just cut that or cut there and...
No, it's fine.
Well, I mean, because...
Well, we're going to start off very soon anyway. So the Naimans, anyways, back to the story. So the Naimans start preparing, and they don't do too much before the Mongols show up, and the Mongols are officially defeated. The Merakids also, some remnants of the Merakids fled there briefly under the leadership of Toktoa, and they also got defeated along with the Naimans, and this is where Jamukha officially meets his very ignominious end of a final drinking night with your ex-bestie, where your ex-bestie tries to spare you, and then you just say, just kill me already, alright? And Genghis breaks his back, so needless to say, he is dead.
In Rashid al-Din version, Chinggis has him cut into little pieces
Oh, yeah.
While
I think I've heard
John
that.
was like screaming curses at him. So
Sounds very much like a Darth Vader transformation.
you got kind of two. Most people like to.
Name it and stuff.
I'm not gonna name it anything. Whatever. So, anyways, we're back. And, so we just got to Jamaica being executed. And Genghis starts rewarding his allies.
For like 20 pages. It goes through, it names all 90 people giving command to 10,000.
Look, he captured a
If
lot.
you're just like reading the secret history for fun, that is, like, it's a great section for scholars, but it's just the worst one if you're just reading this because you want to, know the story of Genghis Khan, and you're like, how many people are in this? He's naming everyone in the army.
It's a large army, all right? And he's got a lot of booty to work with.
But here, so that section, I've always seen this as part of, one of the arguments for the secret history is that, so I think this is up to chapter 6, when John Luca dies and he sets out the army. No, be chapter 7 or 8. Anyways, the point is that those first couple chapters, that those were the original set out section of the secret history.
Oh, wow.
Because what we've just gone through is a sometimes messy but decently cohesive narrative. Like, you have to remember, this was written in the 1200s. They didn't go to a screenwriting class here. But it's telling a cohesive story, something like kind of a Mongolian equivalent of a Arabic or a Muslim Mirror for Princes, if you're familiar with that genre, sort of, so later rulers could go through, sort of see, all right, this is what Genghis Khan had to go through. We remember where we came from. But also, you've mentioned the herders who were rewarded, and we just get in here where it lists everyone getting their military commands and what their rewards are. They can commit 9 crimes before being punished, or for 9 generations they are free from punishment or taxation or whatever.
Yeah, I think
So that this kind of stuff was set out, or was written down, so that the people following could remember basically who was owed what, who was given what, whose family was given this position, so that you didn't have someone going 4 generations down the line and saying, oh, well, Genghis Khan said that my family doesn't have to pay taxes for 9 generations. And you could just go here and go, actually, no, you were given command of 1,000 men. Nothing about taxation, right?
That's hilarious.
And it's sort of, that's why, so the first half of the secret history of the Mongols, and its intention was basically as a reminder, writing it down so someone didn't have to go through and remember all those specific details, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sort of a quasi kind of journal almost, writing everything down, or what's the word? I don't remember what I'm trying to say now, but yeah. So that's sort of in that theory, that's the core of the secret history of the Mongols. And then so that may have been set out as early as 1228, 1229, following Genghis Khan's death in 1227.
Right.
And everything after that, when you get to it, starts discussing the invasion of North China, the Khwarezmian campaigns, death of Genghis, and a little bit on Argadai. That, stylistically, it's very different from the first half, and I'm sure you noticed while reading this, it goes through at a whirlwind pace. It's throwing names at you. It's like the writer had no idea what was going on, almost. They just were sat down, all right, we got a list of Chinese places we attacked. Let's put them there. It mentions Subutai going east, and it's literally just names. Subutai brought the submission of this person, or this tribe, this city, this city, this city. this people, and then came back. Because they was, what the hell's going on in all this? The Horsemean campaign, I love this. This is a huge, like the most famous campaign of the Mongols, of Chinggis Khan. It's reduced to about 6 pages. They confuse when it happened. They do remember why it happened, but they confuse the names of the sultans. They mix them together. They mix Khwarizm Shah Muhammad and his son Jalal al-Din into one person. It remembers somewhat the siege of Urgench.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah.
It's just, what the hell? I don't know. People, all the important generals from the first half just disappear. They just stop being mentioned. It's the second, if you're reading just for fun, stop when they start listing off who's getting military positions, because you've read the best part of the work.
Yeah.
So
I can vouch for that. And anyway, so another aside, as the spoils are being rewarded, the leader of the Naimans, Taiyang, was killed off in the fight, but he had a son by the name of Kuchlu, who managed to flee. He managed to flee all the way to the to the Khitans, or rather,
the Karakitai.
The Karakitai.
That's
and the Karakitai. And as far as I know, I think Tokotoa of the Merkids is still in his party, or either killed off. It's one of those two.
Yeah, there's a fight on the Irtish River in 1208 with sort of a bunch of the remaining Merkids, Toktua, Huchlug of the Naiman, and then Huchlug's uncle Boyruk, who was Taiyang's brother, but they had a fight basically as soon as their father died and sort of split up. So through all of that fighting, at different times, Boyruk and Taiyang would be fighting Chinggis, but never at the same time.
Oh, ouch.
So on the Irtish River in 1208, that's kind of the final stand. Even by then, Chinggis Khan's victory is you can't do anything about it. He's won, but this is kind of your fight. Now he's chasing you guys out of Mongolia. The Irtish River, for those of you who don't have the geography of Central Asia memorized, that's not even in Mongolia. That's on the west side of the Altai Mountains in sort of modern eastern Kazakhstan, Russia.
Oh, wow. That's pretty far.
Northwestern China. So they're defeated there. Toktua's killed shortly before or after that. I don't actually... anyway, well, he's killed about that time. The timeline for all of this, that area is very messy.
Yeah.
Boyruk's killed. Toktua's sons flee to the Kipchak, way in the west.
Oh, wow.
And Huchlug flees first to the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs chase him off. And that actually helps facilitate their entrance into the Mongol Empire.
Right.
Huchlug spends some time with the Karluks around Al-Malik. They chase him off because he was just attacking their own territory. Finally ends up in Karakatai. The Karakatam Gurhan gives him titles, money, gives him one of his daughters in marriage.
And then he betrays him.
2 years later, he's conspiring with Khwarizm Shah Muhammad, betrays the Gurhan, captures him. The Gurhan spends his final 2 years in prison, and Huchlug sort of is hanging on to a fragmenting state up until Seth G comes along and deposes of him.
Yep.
In 1219, I think, is when Huchlug dies.
Yep. And apparently while they're organizing the spoils of the victory over the Naimans, a rather young Tatar by the name of Kargil Shara tries to kidnap Ptolemy. This does not go well, even though he manages to go around Ptolemy's bodyguards and overpower Hulun. And because one of Genghis's daughters shows up on him, and she is Altani. She's about 14, and in one of the most badass female acts in Mongol history, she grabs him by the hair and absolutely whoops his ass. And he is obviously and he is obviously captured and killed very soon after that. And I believe this is also, and I believe that as this is going on, they're also there's also subjugating some of the forest people of like Western Mongolia, getting closer to like the stands. And also showing up on North China and absolutely wrecking everything the Jin owns and loves.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that chapter up in chapter 11. After that, in the year of the sheep, 1211, Genghis Khan set out against the Khitat people, the northern Chinese. And it's just immediately just listing. There's an interesting discussion of Jev orchestrating a feigned retreat. But then, yeah, it's just launching the attack on Chengdu. He sent troops to various towns and cities, ordering them to attack. He sent Zev to attack the city of Dongcheng. Zev reached the city. There's another faint retreat. And it's just, they're sieging their cities. Actually, there's a bit of detail. It's not, this initial attack on the Jin's not as bad as the Khwarezmian campaign description, but it still ends up just being lots of, and then they went here,
and
then they went here, and here's a big description of what they're giving us. Our soil, yeah. You can see they're very. See, when I've read this, I've always figured that everything past 1206, that's written like decades afterwards, and so they're trying to remember stuff like campaigns that they took very poor details on in the first place, and so they just end up like, I think they went into Manchuria then. I think we must have sent an army south at some point, right? Like the city names are garbled. There's a lot of, when you read D. Rachel Wiltz's translation here, or like his notes and stuff, there's a lot of like unidentified.
Yeah.
But sort of early campaign stuff is them attacking China, and some of the minor details are interesting, but honestly, the most interesting thing that happens next in the Secret Histories chronology is just before the invasion of Khorasan, when they're deciding who should be the successor to Genghis Khan. We have this big confrontation with Juche, Chagatai, and of course settle on Urgadai as heir.
So the Zhongdu get wrecked. So Zhongdu gets sacked, and that's eventually going to become Beijing later. And the last Jin emperor, at least as of late, flees south to Kaifeng. And the Jin managed narrowly outlived Genghis, not for too long though. And another conquest that is also happening right around this time is, or at least subjugation of sorts, is the Tanguts. They, after a brief fight, they quickly submit to Genghis, and Genghis's sons, as far as I know, are also being praised for their good service at this point, especially I believe. Tolui and Jochi, which is probably going to be important for later. But while they are sacking Zhongdu, they get a bit of bad news that Kuchlug is all the way in Karakitai, and he's basically saying, "I'm ready to fight you, Genghis." And Genghis is like, I'll go after him in just a hot second. And sends a couple of his generals after him. And while he and his generals are going through there, they start going through some of the forest peoples that Kuchlu kept on just traveling through and not being good guests with. Like, for example, I believe the Uyghurs and the Karluks, and they of course and everything is and all the people who turn to his side as they make their way to the Karakitai get some marriages with Genghis's daughters, such as Arslan of the Karluks marrying Tolai, and at this point, I believe Sorkhan Shira gets Merkid lands, and there is a little bit of praise first on the Night Guards, and eventually they get all the way to the Karakitai, who are led by Kuchlug at this point, or rather what's left of it. And the Karakitai, turns out, surprise twist, they were not ready for the Mongols, because Kuchlug got wrecked. And Kuchlug is killed relatively shortly thereafter, and the Uyghurs, and Uyghurs' leader, the Idikit, becomes known as the fifth son of Genghis, and gets married to another one of Genghis's daughters, I believe, Alaltai?
I don't remember. There's
a lot.
And it's somewhere, but I don't know because his daughters, we kind of only have information about them, sort of like their names, who they got married to. There's a bit more, Alaka Bekti, the one who marries into the Onguts. We have a bit more on her, but the others are kind of
mystery.
His first child with Borte was actually a daughter, and I think that was
Alakai?
Was that Alakai back? Maybe Checheyegan or?
I think Checheyegan is his youngest daughter.
What's this? Well, yeah. We'll see. So I don't off the top. I know it's written down somewhere, but I don't know off the top of my because it's like, oh, you know what order his daughters are. That's great. That's about all you can say about
his daughters.
Most of his daughters. It's you can tell where the interest of the historical authors lie.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you get these interesting little threads, and it's like, well, but that's all it is a thread. You can't tug on that. There's no more information that are going to fall out of some of these trees.
Yeah, and actually speaking of Checheyegan, the Oirats are also joining in right around this time, and this is when they get their marriage alliance in the form of Genghis's daughter Checheyegan, and she marries their chief Inalchi. And I believe one of his generals, they tried to go up against Kwartzi Noyan and Kuduka Beki, and he sends his generals Kwartzi Noyan and Kuduka Beki, and they get defeated by the Tumats. And then Genghis goes in personally because he's kind of pissed, and he wins. And he distributes the Tumats to his friends and family. And then shortly after this, Genghis has finished off all the Karakitai, and he's right on the borders of the Khorazm Empire, and he's like, I don't want to conquer the Khorazmids if I have to, so I might as well trade with them. So he sends a diplomatic mission to the Khorazmids, which is received at Urgench by the governor of Urgench, and the governor, who is also related to Muhammad Shah, and is not trusting of the Mongols because look at what they did to all their neighbors, especially the Karakitai that the Khorazmids so recently sort of trusted.
So the Karakitans had been the nominal overlords of the Khwarezmians up until, I don't remember what the official breakage, but under Shah Muhammad, Khwarezm Shah, he kind of, the Khwarezmians are also kind of those chronic backstabbing sort of lots. There's a lot of them trying to get out from Khan control.
Yeah.
And to simplify things, Shah Muhammad really mucked up that relationship. But it was tense, but not stable, but it was tense. And then Hujluk came in, was sort of like a third factor in here.
Yeah.
And of course he captures the final Gurkha and Shulagu, and then essentially Shah Muhammad and Hujluk break up the Karakai Empire between the two of them. And probably they were going to go to war if left to their own devices for longer. But Hujluk wasn't going to have a very long reign. That he was pissing people off. He was when the Mongol forces actually entered some of Hujluk's eastern territory. They were Muslims, and they greeted the Mongols as liberators because Hujluk took such like a violent brand of. He was originally a Christian, a Nestorian Christian, but then he became a Buddhist.
Right.
And was just like persecuting Muslims. He apparently nailed a imam to the door of his own madrasa.
Oof.
Yeah, he was terrible. So the Mongols showed up, and they were greeted as liberators. So if the Mongols didn't kill Hujluk, if the Khwarezmians didn't kill Hujluk,
somebody's going to.
It was gonna. So, and then the Mongols and Khwarezmians would have been neighbors, anyways, at some points, just by process of gobbling up that power vacuum.
Yeah. And speaking of that, and speaking of them being next to each other, the training mission does not go very well. In fact, they get imprisoned, and some of the training mission is killed. Whatever is left of it goes straight back to Genghis, and they're like, the Khwarezmids are not trading with us, and they killed a bunch of us. And Genghis is like, well, you heard what's up to my trading party, to war!
Well, wait. But before that, he actually sent another round of envoys.
Right, I forgot about that.
A lot of people miss that out, and they think, oh, Genghis wanted to attack Khwarezm. He was actively trying, like, he just wanted those economic ties. He was actively trying to avoid having to pick up all of his armies, start another invasion, while still dealing with all of China.
Yeah, I can't say I blame him.
When one of those envoys is killed, and the other two are sent back with, like, their beards cut off. And that's the official declaration.
Right. And this is around, I believe, 1219, and Genghis hits the Khwarezmids really hard. It starts out. It actually starts out relatively minor, a couple raids here and there, and this sort of leads, I believe, the Khwarezmids into this false sense of security. They're thinking, we can deal with these raids, it's not too much, we're not losing too much. And then suddenly the Mongols are outside of Urgench and besieging it. And with everything, and they're just way too powerful for the Khwarezmids to do anything. And Urgench, of course, gets wrecked because you know how well it treats actual Mongols whenever they come in peacefully. And they find the governor of Urgench, and needless to say, the governor of Urgench tries to negotiate maybe just a small bit, but Genghis is like, I'm through with you. In fact, I'm so through with you, I'm taking some molten silver and shoving it down your throat.
Is that actually in the molten silver in the governor's throat? Is that in the secret history, or is that another?
I don't exactly know. I just know that it comes from there eventually.
I think it's in Juveni, because I don't.
Yeah,
think
that makes sense. Juveni's a bit more detailed, unfortunately.
No, but like I say, it doesn't mention much on.
Right.
I'm just scrolling through the relevant chapter here. But anyways, so Urgench has fallen. Well, the Khwarezmian Empire falls.
Right, the Khorsamids.
In a very abbreviated coverage in the Secret History here. It's our most famous campaign dealt away in about 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah, and they, of course, and everything, and then Samarkand is also wrecked, and Shah Muhammad and Jalal-ad-Din are basically fleeing with whatever's left of the army. And while they're fleeing, Jochi, Chagatai, and Ogedei manage to capture another city, but then they can't agree on who gets what part of its sacking. And then, of course, Genghis sleeps in between, figures out the rest, and they're all scolded because they are fighting over what's left of something when they should be united together because they're Mongols, and of course his sons. And this is apparently over. Oh, here's the city's name, Urungetsi, I believe.
Oh, so that's the Mongol form of Urgench.
Oh, Urgench.
Or Jurgench there.
Ah. So. And Jalal-ad-Din and Jalal-ad-Din is actually is right up around here, and he actually manages to rally some forces when Genghis sends his forces against him, led by Sigi Kutuku, of course, the possible author of the Secret History, and Jalal-ad-Din manages to defeat him. But then overwhelming Mongol numbers and a little bit of quarrels lead Jalal-ad-Din to flee all the way to India. And after that, Genghis turns around because apparently somebody didn't send troops to help him on the Khorzamid campaign, that being the Tanguts. And Genghis turns around, and as he's going that way, or either that or on a hunting trip, he falls off a horse. And that's usually Mongol folklore for bad things are coming. Thankfully, Genghis has planned for a succession, but Genghis is sort of either dying or already dead as they reach the Tanguts, and the Tanguts get royally wrecked. Every city of theirs is sacked. They try a last-ditch effort of breaking all the dikes on the rivers to try to flood out the Mongols, and the Mongols just don't care. They take everything and they kill the entire Tangut royal family and incorporate the Tanguts into the empire. And one of Genghis' wives, so he gets the Tanguts. And this is where, of course, the inheritance is split up before the brothers can even think about killing each other, which, of course, they think about and eventually do. And Ogedei, of course, ascends, and he becomes the new Han. And in the meantime, Subadei is campaigning a bit closer to the Volga, but he's having a little bit of trouble with, I believe, the Kipchaks. And Ogedei and the other Genghis heirs send their various eldest sons to help, such as Batu, I believe a much younger Guyuk, and so on. And Ogedei briefly gets sick, but then recovers, and then they wreck up whatever's left of the Jin. But in the meantime, another important death sort of happens, I believe, around 1230, 1234-ish. Tolui actually dies. Mm-hmm. He's either poisoned or he wanders out of his tent in a drunken stupor and collapses.
Well, the Secret History's the official version is that he gives his life, the shaman has to basically commit suicide in exchange sort of his soul for the Khan's soul to appease the spirits. The non-Secret History sources totally drunk himself to death. You can probably read between the lines there and think which one records it a bit more accurately.
Yeah. And also, I believe at this time the Baghdats are subjugated, and I also think right around this time they come across, I believe, the Tengri story, as far as I know.
Or that's...
or is that later
that's
chapter?
early. That's
Earlier
like
chapter.
about 1206, 1207.
Oh, right when Genghis was very much still alive. Oh, then I should probably cover it real quick here. So, anyways, sorry if I'm wandering in the timeline again. So, anyways, Teb Tengri is a shaman in service to Genghis, and he is the fourth son of Monglik, another general of Genghis, somewhere in there. And
actually, Monglik is the one who marries Ulun after Sui's death. So Teb Tengri is the shaman, and also Genghis'
stepbrother.
Stepbrother, I guess.
Yeah. And Teb Tengri, I believe, has another kid, Aka Kokuchu, who also has 7 sons. And they kind of beat up Hazar, one of Genghis's brothers. And Hazar, of course, complains, and Teb Tengri, in order to appease Hazar, or at least what he thinks might appease Hazar, he makes up a prophecy that Hazar will actually succeed Genghis. And Genghis is like thinking, maybe I should kill him, maybe I should not, I'm not sure. And Hulun actually gets wind of this, and she walks straight up to Genghis and she's like, don't you dare kill another one of my kids! Don't you dare! And Genghis is like, sorry, Hazar, I'm not killing you, we're friends again. Is that cool? We're cool. But some of the people actually believe Teb Tengri. So naturally, Genghis is thinking, we have to break Teb Tengri's power before anything else goes wrong. So naturally, he's challenged to a wrestling match, because that's how Mongols settle things sometimes. And Teb Tengri is a bit hyped up for this. He's reasonably fit. But Genghis, of course, rigged the match. And when I mean rigged the match, he set 3 professional wrestlers on Teb Tengri. And Teb Tengri is wrecked, and his back is broken, and he dies very shortly thereafter. And Monglik is apparently scolded for not teaching his son the right things, and the family is discredited. Of course, this is right around the time that the Imperial Guard and the Empire is formed, and that's basically the end of the Teb Tengri story.
And the end of Teb Tengri.
Yes, very big end with a very broken back. Mm-hmm. Anyways, and after Tolu dies, other people, the Bakhtats, are subjugated, and the Kipchaks are officially racked, with Batu, I believe, gained the credit. And Guyuk isn't well liked by Batu. This might just be foreshadowing for Guyuk, or I believe or just because Guyuk is a little young. But either way, it's all done. The Kipchaks are partly subjugated, at least, and Ogedei continues to rule.
Now that's kind of the how the secret history covers the Great Western Invasion, which ends up in Hungary.
Yeah,
and you can see it's kind of
a feeling out there, because Hungary doesn't exactly stay very long in the Mongol Empire.
Oh, it's 12. They crossed the Carpathians in winter 1240.
Yeah.
Winter 1240, and they cross back over the Carpathians to leave in summer or autumn 1242.
Ah, yeah.
Although they stay a bit, that's not the end of Mongol influence in the area, but there's no lengthy occupation.
Yeah, there is no occupation
of Hungary.
And after that, I think as far as I know, the secret history officially leaves off here. And we get to this next part of this, I believe, the second part of this podcast, which I like to call Juveni, over here. And Juveni is actually an official who starts around the 1250s, and he serves one of Genghis's future grandsons, Hulegu, who is the Ilhan. And Juveni and his family were judges of one of the four schools of Sunni law, specifically, I believe, the Shafi. And the Shafi is specifically based off its legal rhetoric off of the Qurans, the various hadiths, the various quotes of the prophets, and the Ijma. Hope I'm not butchering that too much. Which is basically like the sayings and quotes of some of Muhammad's closest companions, because Muhammad is the founder of the religion of Islam, and it's also apparently based off of some of the other stuff, which includes the Ishatli Jihad and the Qiyas, and the Qiyas is specifically a little bit more analogy. And Juvaini apparently received some education, of course, as befitting his family, at Nizamiya College, and his sons Harun and Baha al-Din were of course, art patrons. And that's with and that's at least my briefing on Juvaini's life, because just as I was communicating with Jack Meister here, Jack Meister showed me a very good article by Christopher Atwood, and this is specifically about how the friendship of Jamukha and Genghis actually connects to Alexander and Darius. So before I go in, Alexander the Great is, of course, the king of Macedonia, and he is one of these first really great world conquerors. And he defeats Darius III, the last of the Achaemenid kings of Persia. And there is, of course, a very famous last meeting between the two before Darius dies. And apparently, Atwood makes the conclusion that Jamukha and Genghis is last seen as loosely based off of this scene. At least loosely. And of course there is an argument, at least from when there's at least an argument there for that, because there are of course many scenes between Jamukha and Genghis, and some of these are of course exclusive to the secret history. And as far as I know, Jamukha isn't well mentioned in Juvaini, and I haven't read Rashid al-Din, so I'll not confirm with Rashid al-Din on that.
No, he is in Rashid al-Din, but Juvaini's coverage of the first 60 years of Chinggis's life is
very fast forward.
Three very broad paragraphs. I don't think there's any mention of Jamukha in Juvaini.
Right.
But of course, Rashid al-Din was actually using, if not the secret history, then the Altan Depter,
yeah,
I think. And he had quite a high-ranking, knowledgeable Mongol. What was his name? Bolad Chingseng, I think, as for a lot of that kind of stuff. So Rashid's much better educated on that earlier stuff than Juvaini is, but. Yes, Jamukha is not just made up by a secret history, but his role in the secret history is much larger and more detailed than it is in any other story. Now that could just be because the secret history is also the most detailed source on this period, and as a result, everyone gets more detail, but Jamukha's appearance in Rashid al-Din, at least, is much more of a minor role. He's still kind of conniving instead of full-on diva that he kind of appears as in the secret history.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff in the secret history, of course, is basically him warning everyone about Genghis Khan, and then apparently trying to smooth things out with Genghis and not. It's him betraying stuff, and apparently, as far as I know, according to Atwood, Jamukha is also nicer in the secret history than in Rashid al-Din's history. and apparently, like in secret history, he actually executes fewer of Genghis's followers after the Battle of Dalam Baljut. And in the last scene in the secret history, Genghis is like, "Hey, I want to rule with Jamukha at my side." And this actually works with a little bit of steppe tradition, as far as I know, that often there are two monarchs of the same tribe, with one leading the east wing and one leading the west wing. This is also done in like the secret in the second Mongol Empire that I mentioned last podcast with Jack Meister. And also, it is, as far as I know, known to Hunnic folklore when the Hunnic kingdom is split between the Tilla and Bleda very briefly. But Jamukha is also mentioned as being buried properly in secret history. And of course, Rashid al-Din had him very much quartered and divided up, like he's
pieces. But according to secret history as well, there's a lot of the battles there where before the end of the battle, Jamukha holds back Togrul from putting in the final assault, or sends a messenger to Temujin alerting him of someone's plans. Like, it's kind of like enough of that kind of stuff that some people have argued that the whole thing was a plot by Temujin and Jamukha for ultimate control, and Temujin ultimately betrays Jamukha at the end. A little too much of a conspiracy for me. I don't think they were quite that organized, but
makes sense.
You could just argue, based on taking the secret history at face value, that they both took the Anda relationship seriously enough that this was Jamukha's sincere concern for his friends, preventing him from ever being able to deliver the final blow.
Oh, wow.
He was so conniving that he kept thinking, hey, Temujin might still be useful to me, so I'll sort of leave him as ace up my sleeve in case things go poorly with the rest of these guys. And he ultimately chose the worst of both worlds.
And got killed there. And of course, this is, and to some extent, I believe that this is also described as being similar to Chinggis. This is feuding with Bektir, or the feuding between Chinggis's kids. But anyways, back to Alexander the Great here, because Atwood covers Alexander pretty obviously because he wants to make the connection between the two famous stories. Because a short version, so Alexander the Great, king of Macedon, he wants to conquer the Persian Empire. He does most of it, and then Darius is forced to flee after Alexander's arguably greatest victory at Gaugamela. And as Darius is fleeing from Alexander's latest victory, he actually gets killed by two of his satraps named Ariobarzanes and Bessus, who also happen to be his in-laws. So, wow, your family's really loyal, eh, Darius? To be fair, considering that Darius had fled from Alexander twice by this point, very few people trusted him at this point. And Darius is left dying, and Alexander shows up to try to catch Darius, possibly trying to kill him, possibly trying to put him into some sort of a subordinate position, and of course, then Alexander gives Darius some water at Darius's request, and Darius signs away all his rights to the Persian throne and gives it to Alexander, along with Alexander's marriage rights to, I believe, his daughter Roxanne.
Very convenient for a guy wanting to justify his control over the empire. Just before he died, he said I could have it all. Hey, his words, not mine.
Well, to be fair, Alexander also had all the resources of the Persian Empire against Bessus, and so Bessus was not going to win anytime soon. And Bessus briefly reigns as Artaxerxes, I believe, the fifth, and they were killed. But that's before Alexander wrecks them, and they are executed as traitors. And this is a very familiar and popular story in Central Asia because Alexander kind of becomes a noble legend in Central Asia, sort of like how Attila becomes a legend to the Germanic peoples.
Yeah, and in Persian tradition too, Shah Muhammad of the Khwarezmian Empire took a title that was like the second Alexander after one of his victories. But I think he even had it on his coins, but I'm not too sure about that. But was basically styling himself, "Oh, I am the second Alexander the Great, the second coming of."
Yeah.
So that's
Giovanni mentions that, if I remember correctly.
So
oh yeah, he does. Yeah.
100 years. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And this is, and of course, this is probably a little bit of a bit more of a where Atwood goes into comparison. There's of course the rivalry between the two leaders, and then finally when one is defeated, one offers friendship. But of course, sort of like Harry Potter, neither can live while the other survives. So. And of course, the Mongols were available for encountering this story because it was famous throughout Central Asia, and they conquered the Khwarezmites who have kept those records specifically. And I believe this is, and they would have likely encountered this through the Shahnameh, one of the earlier sources on the various Persian Shahs.
Well, the Mongols were also the first ones to illustrate the Shahnameh, and their illustrations in the Shahnameh portraying the Alexander story, where Alexander the Great is shown as a Mongol wearing Mongolian-style armor. So,
wow.
At least there's an occasion where Alexander was Mongol. But even then, I don't remember if this was something Atwood said or not, but the Alexander story could have traveled all the way to Mongolia prior to the 13th century. It's no less likely than several of the tribes in Mongolia becoming Christian in the 11th and 12th century.
I believe the Chinese were familiar with it too because they had trade connections with the Greeks going very far back. So
it's, a whole tribe's converting to Christianity is less likely than a single story going all the way to Mongolia. And, their warrior culture, they like stories about conquerors. You get told a romanticized story of these two conquerors, sworn brothers, one final dramatic meeting. Yeah, sure, Dave. Why not? But it's an interesting, I'm not, I don't really see it as quite the stand-in that Atwood, I see where he's coming from, but I'm personally not wholly convinced on his argument there. But
yeah, I'm kind of around the same position, because I encountered something very similar when I went through, I believe, it was Carrier's the historicity of Jesus. I encountered that because my dad was getting to atheism and he was trying to figure out some of the books and stuff, and I read it out of interest, also so Dad could shut up about trying to get me to read it, and it was interesting, and I was like, I understand where you're coming from, but no. Jesus existed, I'm sure of it. I can check. And
I think with this format too of it's like the Darius and Alexander sort of style meeting, is that it's not that hard a format to come across sort of out of your own storytelling tradition.
Oh yeah.
The two sworn enemies having sort of one final meeting, one's pledging his loyalty, but has to be killed for whatever reason. It's not. I don't see that being so unique that it has to be from the Alexander romances.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they want a romanticized version. You end up with, you know, people like the better story, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
And they're, of course, talking about some of the various marriage alliances that were around, like one of Ptolemy marrying, I believe, the daughter of Jurlchadai. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that is specifically the clan leader of the Urunguts. But the story is possibly also theorized as coming from Chinggis because he's trying to justify him taking over from Jamuka, who was one of course, one of the big shot leaders of the Mongols, because Chinggis was not necessarily upper class. He didn't exactly have the sort of claims that everybody else before him did because of his lineage.
He was good lineage, but not. His lineage is worth more than he actually was to start.
Right.
At least. Because it's also been argued that the whole lineage was fabricated or enhanced to sort of make his claim to fame or his claim to legitimacy as the heir to the Hamok Mongol more legitimate.
Right.
But because officially he had this descent, but he wasn't like any kind of wealthy, like power base he was working off of to start with. Mm-hmm. So he had the blood, he just didn't have the money, essentially.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the fact that probably, like many things, the secret history is drawn on multiple Eastern legends. Not going to specify because we got to keep on moving. And I guess it could, and of course, that's where Atwood's article ends, and I guess we can get all the way officially to Juveni.
Well, I'm going to have to stop you there because it's getting dark here, and I actually have to go set my horses in for the night.
Oh yeah, please go do that. Don't leave them out to freeze.
Wait! You have horses?
Yes.
Too old.
Aww.
2 old guys, but it's going to be getting down to minus 25 Celsius tonight. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
Cold.
Very cold.
It's cold in Fahrenheit.
Very, very cold. So it's good to get them into stalls now sooner than later. So and it's like black outside now too. So
yeah.
For the orbit of the Earth. Thanks. It's cold.
Yeah.
Sometimes it likes to remind us that. Sometimes the climate likes to remind me that I'm in Canada. Oh, I dropped down to minus 20 for a week. Is that like minus 8 or something in Fahrenheit? I don't know. Is minus 8 cold in Fahrenheit?
Oh, very cold.
Yeah, hang on. Let me. Okay. Well, that's not how you spell Celsius. Celsius. Okay, whatever. Let's go for that because I also don't know how to spell Fahrenheit.
F-A-H-R.
Negative 20 Celsius is about -4 Fahrenheit, so that's, about as cold as it gets here. We can get lower than that. So.
Zero the same? Celsius and Fahrenheit?
No, it's like 0 degrees Celsius is 200. Is
0
like
degrees Celsius is 32.
32, right?
How the hell do you...
Yeah, I know. I hate it too.
Fahrenheit doesn't make any sense to...
It doesn't.
I know. I'm not a fan of the American system
someone
either.
tells you, it's 100 degrees out. It's what?
Yeah.
I know. I've been wanting to switch over to the metric for a while. But anyways, I think we're gonna let you go and get your horses, and we'll have to finish up on Juveni another time.
That was lots of fun, guys. I always love talking about the secret history. So, all right then. I'll let you guys get away because I have to get away. So
Yeah, tell your horses hi for me.
I will. They're going to be so pissed.
Alright.
No. So, anyways, so in future, if you just contact me on the Facebook Messenger, that's probably easiest because
Right.
Yeah, I only get. See, it doesn't send me notifications like on the main screen for Gmail. Like I have to actually manually open up Gmail.
Oh, yeah.
So if I forget to do that, then I never see it until and for whatever reason too, with a couple of your emails now, it's not sent to the primary folder, it's sent it to promotions, which I don't know about you, but I don't tend to go out of my way to look at the ads that are being sent to my...
Yeah, I don't either.
No.
So,
But anyways...
yeah, so just do that in future. Contact the...
the official page.
Facebook page, because then I'll see it right away, and I should probably preface too, I'm just bad at responding to everyone in general. Like if I don't respond immediately, it's like out of my head for, oh right, I gotta respond to that. But yeah, so that was fun. We'll be in touch then, and yeah, all right. Good pleasure talking to you guys.
Bye, my dude.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah, you as well.
Mm-hmm.
See you later.
See ya. So, I think I'm going to actually probably put Giovanni over onto the next podcast because, wow, that took a long time.
It did. That's 2 hours now.
Yeah, that's our longest podcast so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to get even longer considering that Giovanni is like 800 pages. But anyways, so before we go, I'm going to put in, of course, a bunch of the plugs, which are going to be in the description. Obviously, follow Jack Meister at his YouTube channel, if you aren't already. And, of course, follow me. Tweet me at YoungBards101. And also, I have my own Facebook page, obviously. And Robin also has a Tumblr. And so do I. So follow us both, obviously.
Woo!
We also have a Patreon. And each Patreon tier is actually named after the legitimate sons of Genghis, because keep in mind he also had a bunch of illegitimate ones. So I'm just going to quickly rattle off the tiers here. So going from reverse order. So the Totally tier gets a shout out in the podcast, and of course and some early access, or that's going to happen whenever I get patrons, and then of course and then there's Ogadai, and this is also this is the Ogadai tier, and you get of course that and voting privileges in our polls whenever I come up with them and whenever I get patrons, and probably once a month I'll try to pick out a patron for whom I write a short story for, and then of course there's the $10 tier, that's Chagatai. The Chagatais get of course all of the previous privileges, and after that they also get to make the polls, make some polls that they want to, and of course subscribe to my YouTube channel at Samwise J. Morgenstern. And you've been listening to the Mongols podcast. Bye from me and Bijubi.
That has been the Mongols podcast. This is the Mongols podcast exit song that I'm singing now, even though I've butchered Mongols as a word like twice already, but I have corn nuts in my mouth, so oh well. Do.
All right, and bye.